A young waitress stood up to 4 violent bikers, but she had no idea the 2 men watching were John Cena and Dwayne Johnson. What happened next changed her life forever. Watch till the end. Hit like, subscribe, and comment. I stand for respect. Ellie Turner's mornings always started the same way: too early, too tired, and too quiet. At 19, she'd already lived the kind of exhaustion most people didn't see until their 40s. Every day was the same loop: wake up before sunrise, check her sister's backpack, make breakfast from whatever was left in the fridge, and then walk the 2 miles to the roadside diner where she spent most of her waking hours. Her little sister, Haley, was 14, sharp, kind, and still believed in things like college and happy endings. Ellie had made herself a promise. Haley would never have to work at her age. If someone had to clean tables and scrub floors, it would be Ellie. If someone had to skip meals to pay bills, it would be Ellie. She'd been doing it long enough to forget what she actually wanted for herself. The diner was the kind of place that smelled of burnt coffee and fried eggs no matter the hour. A cracked neon sign buzzed above the door, wrote 47 Cafe, a stop for truckers, locals, and tired travelers. Ellie had been working here since she was 16, ever since their mother left town and their father disappeared a year before that. She tied her apron, pulled her hair into a bun, and whispered the same words she said every morning. "Just one more day, Haley. One more day." Inside, the day had already begun to blur. Orders shouted from the kitchen, the bell above the door chiming non-stop, the hum of small-town life in full swing. Ellie moved through it like clockwork, refilling mugs, scribbling checks, remembering faces but never names. Most customers didn't notice her. That was fine. The fewer who did, the easier it was to breathe. It was past noon when the door opened again and 2 men stepped inside. They didn't look like truckers. Clean, solid build. The first wore a bright green t-shirt and a matching cap pulled low. His expression was calm, serious, but his eyes scanned the room like someone used to reading people. The second wore a plain white shirt that clung to his shoulders like it had been tailored for him. He had the same quiet confidence, the kind of presence that didn't need noise to draw attention. Ellie gave them both a polite smile, her voice steady despite the rush. "Welcome to Route 47. Can I start you off with something to drink?" "2 coffees, the one in green said with a small grin. "Black." "And maybe some burgers," the man in white added. "We'll take 2. She jotted it down, nodded, and hurried back toward the counter. She didn't linger. Too many other customers needed her. She didn't even realize who they were. Lunch rush was peaking, every table full, orders piling up. Ellie's feet ached, her head throbbed, but she kept moving. Plates out, cups refilled, smiles forced. She'd done this 1,000 times before. Then, at 12:47, the rhythm of the room broke. The door slammed open, hard enough to rattle the bell above it. 4 men entered. Bikers. They were all muscle, noise, and leather. Boots heavy on the tile, jackets creaking with patches from some local club. The first, tall, thick-bearded with eyes like dull metal, didn't even bother using his hands. He kicked the door wider, walked in first, and scanned the place like he owned it. Conversations faltered. The tourists by the window went silent. A mother pulled her child a little closer. The cook peeked out from behind the kitchen window, his spatula frozen mid-air. The lead biker dropped into the nearest chair, turned it sideways, and swung his legs up onto the table. His boots thudded against the wood. "Hey, sweetheart," he barked. "Come on over. Let's get some service here." Ellie froze mid-step. Every instinct screamed to disappear, to hide, but that wasn't an option. She was the only waitress on duty. She took a breath and walked toward them. "Good afternoon," she said softly. "What can I get you?" The man smirked. "Look at that. Polite. That's cute." He leaned back, looking her up and down. "You always this friendly, or just when you see real men walk in?" His buddies laughed. One of them added, "Bet she flirts like that for better tips. Works with old truckers, huh, baby?" Her face stayed still. Inside, her stomach knotted. "I'll take your order," she said. "4 burgers," the leader snapped. "Extra cheese, extra fries, and smile when you bring 'em. You don't get paid to look sad." She nodded, wrote it down, and walked away before he could say more. Behind her, their laughter followed, low, mean, the kind that tried to claw at your dignity. By the time she returned with their food, half the cafe had emptied. People avoided eye contact. No one wanted trouble. Ellie placed the plates down one by one. "Anything else?" The leader tilted his head. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Bring me the check." She blinked. He hadn't eaten half his food yet, but fine. The sooner they paid, the sooner this ended. She brought the slip, set it on the edge of the table. He stared at it, then at her. Then he laughed, sharp and cruel. "You think I'm paying for this garbage?" He slammed his palm against the tray, sending the drinks flying. Hot coffee splashed across her chest, soaking her apron, scalding through the thin fabric. She gasped, stepping back. "Oops," he sneered. "Guess you should have moved faster. Look at you, perfect little worker covered in coffee. Maybe that's your uniform now?" The others howled. Ellie's hands shook, but she steadied them against her sides. "Please," she said quietly, "take your things and leave." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a growl. "I'll leave when I'm done, not when you tell me. You hear me? You work for us now. Be grateful I don't break this dump in half." Her heart pounded, but she didn't back away. "Take the check," she said again, "and leave." For a moment, even the hum of the fridge seemed to stop. The biker's grin faded. His chair scraped the floor as he stood, slow, deliberate. He towered over her, breathing beer and smoke. "What did you just say?" Ellie didn't move. "I said," and that was when a voice cut through the silence from the back corner. "Hey," she said to pay and leave. The sound was calm, solid, like a warning bell before a storm. Everyone turned. At the far table, the man in the green shirt stood up. His companion in white didn't move yet. He just watched, elbows resting on the table, gaze locked on the bikers. The leader squinted, confused for half a second. Then he snorted. "Who the hell are you supposed to be?" The man in green didn't answer. He just took a step forward, his expression unreadable. And the air in the diner changed. Something was about to happen. The diner felt heavier than air. Nobody spoke. The laughter, the casual chatter, even the hum of the fryer seemed to vanish the moment the man in the green shirt spoke. His words lingered, calm, sharp, impossible to ignore. The leader of the bikers turned toward him, amusement twisting across his face. "Well, look at this," he said, his voice oily with arrogance. "We got ourselves a hero. You got something to say, tough guy?" Ellie stood frozen beside the counter. Her shirt still clung wet against her skin, the coffee seeping through, stinging where it had scalded her chest. Every instinct screamed for her to move, to hide, but her legs wouldn't obey. The room was locked in a fragile stillness, a single breath away from breaking. The man in the green shirt didn't raise his voice. "I said, pay your bill and leave her alone." His tone wasn't loud, but it carried like thunder in that silence. One of the bikers snickered. "Hey, boss, maybe he wants to take her place? We could make him serve, too." The leader grinned, leaning against the table. "You really want to get involved, friend? This ain't your business." Before the man could reply, Ellie found her voice again. "Please," she said, her voice shaken. "Just go. I don't want—" The biker cut her off, slamming his hand down so hard that the table rattled. "Shut it. You don't tell me what to do." He turned back to the stranger. "You heard her? She's fine. So mind your own." But the man in green had already taken a step closer. He didn't look angry, just steady. Behind him, his companion in the white shirt watched quietly, his eyes following every move. Something about their calmness made the bikers hesitate for the first time. The leader's smile faltered. "You really think you scare me, huh?" He straightened up, puffing his chest. "Big guy like you, what are you gonna do? Throw me out?" No answer. Just another step closer. The tension snapped. The biker's hand shot out, fast, aiming for Ellie's arm as if to prove a point. "See? She doesn't mind a little." He never finished the sentence. The man in green caught his wrist mid-air. The motion was so quick that no one saw it happen. 1 second, the biker was reaching. The next, his arm was pinned, twisted with effortless control. His face flushed red with pain. "Let go," the stranger said quietly. The biker tried to pull free but couldn't. The stranger's grip didn't even tighten. It just stopped him, completely. No struggle, no anger, only power that didn't need to shout. "Don't touch her again." The room exhaled as the leader jerked his arm back, stumbling a step. "You broke my wrist, you son of—" He bit the words off, glaring. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." He snapped his fingers at the others. "Get him!" 3 men stood up at once. Chairs scraped. The cook ducked behind the counter. Ellie gasped, taking a step back. Then the second stranger, the one in the white shirt, finally rose. He was taller than the rest, his shoulders broad enough to block the light behind him. He didn't rush. He didn't posture. He simply adjusted his wristband and looked at the group of men as if deciding which one to deal with first. "Don't," he said. It was one word, but it stopped them. The leader laughed nervously, trying to keep his edge. "What, you two think you're some kind of tag team? This ain't TV, buddy." The man in white smirked, almost amused. "You'd be surprised." The bikers lunged. The first swung at the man in green and found himself slammed chest first onto a table, the sound of wood cracking under his weight. The second rushed the man in white, who sidestepped so smoothly it looked rehearsed. A quick shove, and the biker tripped over a chair, sprawling flat on his back. The third froze, realizing too late that he was now alone. The man in green turned toward him, calm as ever. The biker took one look at the 2 strangers, their stances balanced, ready, unshaken, and dropped his gaze. "Pick up your friends," the man in white said, "and the check." The leader spat, but his bravado was fading fast. He looked around the diner, at the people watching, at the 2 men who hadn't even broken a sweat. And for the first time, something like doubt crossed his face. He muttered, "Fine," and reached for his wallet. Ellie didn't move. Her breath came shallow, her body still trembling. The man in green walked past her, picked up one of the fallen chairs and set it upright. He didn't look at her yet. He just turned back to the bikers. "You're done here," he said. "Pay up, then get out." The leader threw a crumpled handful of bills on the table, sneering. "Happy now, hero?" The man in green didn't reply. His companion did, with a small, measured grin. "Not yet. Tip her. 10% for service, $90 for the mess. The bikers hesitated. No one laughed this time. The leader pulled out another few bills, dropped them on top of the pile, and motioned to his crew. "Let's go." As they pushed through the door, one of them muttered under his breath, "Freaking psychos." The bell jingled, then silence. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, sound returned. A cough, the hiss of the coffee pot, a quiet sob that Ellie didn't even realize was hers. She wiped her cheek quickly, embarrassed. The man in green turned to her. "You okay?" She nodded, though her hands still trembled. "I think so." "Thank you." His tone softened. "You don't have to thank me. You didn't deserve that." The man in white stepped closer, resting his forearms on the counter. "You handled it better than most would have. You stood your ground." Ellie tried to speak, but her throat felt tight. All she managed was, "They come in sometimes. Everyone just looks away." The man in green met her eyes. "Not today." He reached into his pocket, pulled out cash, and laid it neatly beside the ruined check. For the meal, and for the trouble. Before she could protest, they turned toward the door. "Wait," she started, but stopped herself. They were already gone, the bell chiming once behind them. She stood there for a long while, the scent of coffee still in the air, the silence oddly peaceful. The money they left glowed faintly against the counter. Real, solid, proof that someone, finally, had stood up. Outside, through the front window, she saw the green shirt and the white one disappear down the road. She didn't know who they were. Not yet, but the world suddenly didn't feel so cruel. The following morning felt unreal to Ellie. The diner looked the same. Same squeaky floor, same coffee smell, same hum of the refrigerator in the back, but everything felt different. People who had watched in silence the day before were suddenly talking, whispering. The story had spread through town overnight. 4 bikers humiliated by 2 strangers who'd stopped them cold. Nobody knew the full details, but everyone was talking about the waitress and those 2 guys. Ellie didn't like the attention. She'd had enough eyes on her yesterday to last a lifetime. All she wanted now was quiet. Just her, the dishes, and her paycheck. But quiet wasn't what she got. At 11 a.m., a silver SUV pulled up outside the diner. 2 men stepped out, the same 2 from yesterday. Ellie froze in mid-wipe of a table. Her heart jumped. She hadn't expected to see them again. The one in green held the door open for a woman carrying a camera. The other, the taller one in white, smiled politely at a couple leaving, nodding in that calm, effortless way that made people instantly comfortable. The manager, who'd hidden in the kitchen during the fight yesterday, nearly tripped over himself trying to greet them. "Gentlemen, welcome back," he stammered. "Coffee on the house." Ellie wanted to melt into the wall. They sat at the same booth as before, quiet but noticeable. Every eye in the place found them, especially when the man in green took off his cap. The realization hit like lightning. Customers started murmuring. One whisper turned into another until someone said it out loud. "Is that John Cena?" And the other, the tall, composed man in white, smiled faintly, giving a little wave. "Yeah!" someone gasped. "And that's The Rock! That's Dwayne Johnson!" Ellie stood frozen, her notepad dangling from her hand. She had served them burgers and coffee, argued with herself about their bill, and walked away without realizing she'd been face to face with 2 of the most famous wrestlers on earth. John Cena noticed her stunned expression and chuckled. "Hey, don't worry. Yesterday we were just 2 hungry guys," Dwayne added, "and now we're just 2 hungry guys again." That broke the tension. Laughter rippled through the room. Even Ellie smiled, really smiled, for the first time in days. She approached their table cautiously. "So, I guess you two didn't mention the whole WWA thing yesterday on purpose." Cena shrugged. Didn't seem important. Dwayne leaned forward. "You were more worried about everyone else than yourself. That said a lot more than any name ever could." Ellie blushed. "I just didn't want them to hurt anyone." "Or you," Dwayne said gently. "You didn't back down. That takes guts." The conversation drew the attention of a local news reporter, the woman who had entered with them. She smiled warmly. "We're covering last night's incident. John and Dwayne told us what happened. They didn't want the credit, but your story deserves to be heard." "My story?" Ellie repeated, startled. Cena nodded. "You stood your ground when no one else did. That's worth more than what we did." Ellie's throat tightened. "I just did what anyone should." Dwayne shook his head slowly. "You'd be surprised how many people don't." The manager hovered awkwardly nearby, guilt painted across his face. "Ellie, I'm sorry for yesterday. I should have stepped in. I froze." She looked at him for a long second, then nodded. "It's over. Let's just make sure it never happens again." Cena smiled approvingly. "That's the right kind of forgiveness. Strong, but not forgetful." They talked a little more, about Haley, about Ellie's long hours, about how she was saving every penny so her sister could stay in school. Cena listened carefully. Dwayne leaned in, genuinely interested. "How old's your sister?" Dwayne asked. 14, Ellie said. "She's smart, smarter than I ever was. She wants to be a teacher." "That's beautiful," Cena said. "You're giving her a future. That's what family is." Ellie tried to smile, but her eyes shimmered. "I just don't want her to end up like me, working 2 jobs, exhausted every day." Dwayne's expression softened. "Hey," he said quietly, "there's nothing wrong with honest work. You stood up to 4 grown men. You've got more backbone than half the people I've met in this industry." Cena laughed. "Trust me, that's saying something." The air lightened again. The 2 men finished their meals, paid double the price, and left a tip so large Ellie thought it was a mistake. Before leaving, Dwayne handed her a small folded note. "Open it later," he said. They waved goodbye, and the diner erupted in murmurs again the moment the door closed behind them. Ellie stood still for a long moment before finally unfolding the paper. Inside, written in bold, firm handwriting, were just a few words. "Keep going. You're not alone. D and J." She pressed the note against her chest, the tears finally falling, not from fear, but relief. That night, when she walked home under the pink desert sunset, Haley ran to meet her at the door. "You're on the internet," her sister shouted. "You're everywhere." Ellie blinked. "What are you talking about?" Haley spun the laptop toward her. On the screen was a video, grainy security footage from the diner. The fight, the rescue, the calm confrontation, millions of views already. In the caption it read, "WA stars John Cena and Dwayne The Rock. Johnson stop, biker harassment. Waitress becomes local hero." Ellie covered her mouth, speechless. Haley grinned through tears. "That's you, Elle. You're famous." Ellie shook her head slowly. "No, Hales. I'm not famous. I just got lucky." But deep down, something in her had shifted. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible, and tomorrow, everything would change again. The next few days passed like a dream Ellie couldn't quite wake from. The diner, that had once been half empty every morning, now overflowed with customers. Locals, reporters, and curious travelers who wanted to see the place where it happened. The walls that once echoed with silence now hummed with conversation and laughter. But Ellie didn't care about the cameras or the noise. What mattered was that the fear was gone. The bikers never came back, and for the first time she could breathe again. The video kept spreading. It was everywhere, on the news, on social media, on the WWA channel itself. Clips of John Cena and Dwayne Johnson standing up for her played over and over, but it wasn't just about them. People talked about her. The girl who didn't run, who told them to leave even when no one else dared. Stand with Ellie, respect not fear, be the voice. Haley was glued to her laptop, smiling every time she saw her sister's name. "They're calling you brave," she said one night, her eyes bright. "Everyone's writing about how you stood up for yourself." Ellie sat beside her, still in her apron, exhausted from the long shift but smiling anyway. "I didn't do it to be brave, Hales. I just didn't want to feel small anymore." Haley looked at her, voice soft. "Well, you're not small to me. You never were." The next morning, Ellie returned to work expecting another crowded, noisy day. But what she found waiting at her station stopped her in her tracks. On the counter sat a white envelope, no name, no address, just one word written in bold black ink. "For you." She opened it carefully. Inside was a check, $20,000, and a handwritten note. For Haley's education, for your courage, for standing tall when the world looked away. From two guys who believe in you. Her breath caught, her hands trembled. She didn't have to guess who it was from. Cena and Dwayne hadn't just stopped to fight. They'd changed everything. That money meant Haley could stay in school without worrying. It meant Ellie could finally quit one of her jobs, rest a little, maybe even take a few night classes like she'd dreamed about. But more than that, it meant something deeper. Proof that good people still existed. When she looked out the window that afternoon, she saw a familiar sight. A crowd of motorcycles parked across the street. For a second, her stomach twisted, but this time it wasn't fear. The men who walked in weren't the same troublemakers. Their jackets read Veterans Riders for Justice. Their leader, older, calm, respectful, removed his helmet and approached her counter. "Ma'am," he said softly, "I think we owe you a coffee." Ellie blinked, unsure how to respond. "Why?" He smiled. "Because my daughter saw your story online. She's a waitress too. You reminded her that strength isn't about muscle, it's about standing up. So, from one family to another, thank you." He set down a donation envelope marked for Haley. Inside, another $3,000. Word of her courage had spread further than she ever expected. Donations poured in from strangers across the country. Some sent money, others letters. Most just wrote the same simple message. "You reminded us to care." Within a month, the diner owner installed cameras, emergency buttons, and even organized a community training on bystander protection. The same people who once looked away now stood together. And Ellie, still humble, still quiet, became a symbol for the town. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the incident, the mayor declared, "Stand Up for Kindness Day." John Cena and Dwayne Johnson returned to celebrate, not as celebrities, but as friends. The diner overflowed again, this time with laughter, not fear. Cena raised his coffee mug and said, "To Ellie Turner, proof that one person's courage can wake up a whole town." The crowd cheered. Haley beamed with pride. Dwayne added with a grin, "And to the waitress who made 2 world champions look like rookies in courage." Laughter filled the room. Ellie blushed but smiled wide. Later that evening, after everyone left, she stood alone outside the diner watching the sunset paint the desert gold. Haley joined her, leaning against her shoulder. "Do you ever think about that day?" Haley asked. "Every day," Ellie said softly, "but not because of what happened. Because it reminded me that strength doesn't come from fists or fame. It comes from choosing to stand, even when you're shaken." Haley smiled. "You think people will remember you?" Ellie looked at the fading horizon. "I don't need them to. I just need them to remember what it means to care." As the last light slipped beneath the desert hills, Ellie took her sister's hand and whispered, "Let's go home." And for the first time in a long, hard life, she felt like she truly could.